The desert crash, the emergency beacon cut through the stillness of the Nevada desert like a knife. James Sullivan jerked upright from his evening reading, nearly spilling his coffee across the geological survey reports scattered on his desk. For 3 years, he had lived alone at this remote research outpost, studying mineral deposits and enjoying the solitude that came after 2 decades as a military combat medic. The beacon meant only one thing: something had crashed, and someone needed help. James grabbed his medical kit and emergency pack, then climbed into his aging hover truck. The beacon's signal led him 12 miles northwest, into the rocky badlands where few ventured after dark. The twin moons cast silver light across the landscape, illuminating a scene that made his breath catch. A sleek craft, no larger than a small aircraft, had carved a burning trench through the sand before coming to rest against a formation of red rocks. The hull bore markings he had never seen before, geometric patterns that seemed to shimmer even in the wreckage. He approached cautiously, medical training overriding his shock. The craft's hatch had been blown outward from the inside. James found the pilot 20 feet away, collapsed in the sand. The figure was humanoid, but distinctly alien, with skin that shifted between deep purple and silver in the moonlight. Tall and lean, the pilot wore form-fitting armor that had been badly damaged. Blood darker than human blood and faintly luminescent, seeped from multiple wounds. James knelt beside the alien, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. The pilot's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that swirled like molten gold. Fear flashed across the alien's angular features, but James spoke softly. "Easy there. I'm a medic. I'm going to help you." The alien tried to speak, but only managed a rasping sound. James worked quickly, applying field dressings and administering a broad-spectrum painkiller he hoped would work across species. The pilot's anatomy was similar enough to human that he could identify the worst injuries: a deep gash across the ribs, burns on the left arm, and what appeared to be a head injury. "Can you walk?" James asked. The alien nodded weakly. Together, they made it to the truck. James secured his patient in the passenger seat and drove back to his station, his mind racing. By harboring an unknown alien, he was potentially violating a dozen regulations. But his oath as a medic came first: do no harm and help those in need. Back at the station, James carried the pilot to his medical bay, a well-equipped room that reflected his years of emergency medicine. Under proper lighting, he could see his patient more clearly. The alien was male, with high cheekbones and a strong jawline. His hair, if it could be called that, was a cascade of crystalline strands that caught the light. Over the next several hours, James treated the wounds with careful precision. The pilot drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring words in a melodic language James could not understand. By dawn, the worst had passed. The alien's breathing had steadied, and the bleeding had stopped. James sat in a chair beside the medical bed, exhausted but satisfied with his work. As the first light of morning streamed through the window, the pilot's eyes opened fully for the first time. He studied James with an intensity that was both unnerving and strangely compelling. "You saved my life," the alien said, his voice accented but clear. "I am Vexari of the Thalarine Empire. You have my deepest gratitude." James managed a tired smile. James Sullivan, retired combat medic and current hermit. "What happened up there?" Vexari's expression darkened. "I was fleeing assassins. I am a diplomatic envoy, carrying treaty documents that would establish formal peace between your people and mine. There are factions on both sides who wish to prevent this." He paused, wincing as he tried to sit up. James gently pushed him back down. "Rest. You've got broken ribs. Maybe worse." Vexari caught James's hand, his grip surprisingly warm. "You do not understand. If they find me here, they will kill us both. I have brought danger to your doorstep." James met the alien's golden eyes steadily. "Then we'll deal with it together. I didn't patch you up just to let someone finish the job." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of shared values. Vexari's fingers tightened briefly on James's hand before releasing. "You are either very brave or very foolish, James Sullivan." "Probably both," James admitted. "Now, Tell me about these assassins. In this treaty, as Vexar explained, James felt his peaceful isolation crumbling. The Thalarine Empire had been observing Earth for decades, waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of technological and social development before making contact. Vexari had been chosen to deliver the treaty proposal because of his diplomatic skills and his belief in peace. But powerful military contractors and war profiteers from both species wanted the conflict to continue. James listened, fascinated despite the danger. Vexari spoke with passion about his people's culture, their art and philosophy. The Thalarine valued honor above all else, viewing warfare as a last resort rather than a first option. As Vexari talked, James found himself drawn not just to the alien's words, but to the being himself. There was an elegance to Vexari's movements, a thoughtfulness in his expressions. When their eyes met, James felt something he had not experienced since his wife's death 5 years ago. Genuine connection. "You should rest now," James finally said, standing. "I'll keep watch." Vexari caught his wrist. "James, I sense you are alone here by choice, seeking solitude after great loss. I apologize for disturbing your peace." James looked down at the hand on his wrist, surprised by the alien's perceptiveness. "Some disturbances are worth it. Get some sleep, Vexari." The morning siege, James woke to an apocalyptic sight. The sky, previously clear desert blue, was now filled with ships. Massive vessels hung in the atmosphere like metal clouds, their hulls gleaming in the morning sun. Some bore the geometric symbols he had seen on Vexari's crashed craft. Others displayed different markings, angular and aggressive. His communication console erupted with alerts and emergency broadcasts. James rushed to the medical bay where Vexari was already attempting to stand despite his injuries. "Has found me," Vexari said, his voice tight with pain and resignation. "Both my people and those who hunt me. The larger fleet, those are Thalarine. They have come to retrieve me and the treaty documents. But those smaller ships, the ones moving to intercept them, those belong to the Krell Syndicate. Mercenaries hired to ensure I never reach Earth's diplomatic corps." As they watched, the first shots were exchanged. Brilliant beams of energy lanced between ships, and the desert morning filled with the thunder of battle. James's tactical training kicked in. "My station has defensive shields, but they won't hold against that kind of firepower for long. We need a plan." Vexari turned to him, and James saw something new in those golden eyes. Hope mixed with fear. Not fear for himself, but fear of what might happen to James. "You should evacuate. If you contact the Thalarine fleet, they will ensure your safety. This is not your fight." James crossed his arms. "You made it my fight when you crashed in my desert. Besides, I'm not leaving you." The intensity of Vexari's gaze made James's pulse quicken. "Why risk yourself for me? You owe me nothing." James stepped closer, surprising himself with his boldness. "Maybe I want to. Maybe I'm tired of being alone. Maybe you're the first person, alien or otherwise, who's made me feel something in 5 years." The words hung between them, raw and honest. Vexari's expression softened, and he reached up to touch James's face with careful fingers. "Your species continues to amaze me. Such courage, such heart." As the moment shattered as an explosion rocked the station, a Krell fighter had broken through the Thalarine defensive line and was targeting James's position. James pulled Vexari away from the window as energy blasts struck the shields. "We need to move now." He helped the injured alien to his equipment room, where he kept emergency supplies and weapons from his military days. "Can you shoot?" James asked, handing Vexari a plasma rifle. "I am a diplomat, not a soldier, but I am not helpless." Vexari checked the weapon with practiced ease. They made their way to the station's communication array. If they could broadcast the treaty documents to Earth's government and the Thalarine fleet simultaneously, the assassination attempt would fail. But the Krell were closing in, their ships landing around the perimeter. James and Vexari fought side by side as armored mercenaries breached the station. Despite his injuries, Vexari moved with grace, his shots precise and efficient. James covered him, his combat medic training serving him well in the firefight. In a brief lull, trapped in the communication room as they uploaded the treaty files, Vexari spoke. "If we survive this, James Sullivan, I would like to understand you better. Your kindness, your strength, they are not common traits in my experience." James, checking the upload progress, glanced at him. "Is that a diplomat's way of saying you're interested?" Vexari's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Among my people, we are direct about such matters. Yes, I am interested. Deeply so." James felt warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he had thought buried with his late wife. "Good to know I'm not imagining this connection." An explosion above them sent debris raining down. James shielded Vexari with his body, feeling the alien's arms wrap around him in return. For a heartbeat, they held each other amid the chaos. James realized that whatever happened next, his life had irrevocably changed. The upload completed just as Thalarine forces breached the station. Driving back the Krell mercenaries, a tall female Thalarine in ornate armor approached, her eyes widening at the sight of Vexari. "Ambassador, you live. The treaty." Vexari gestured to the console. "Transmitted to both Earth and our fleet. The conspiracy has failed." The officer noticed how close James and Vexari stood, how Vexari's hand rested on James's shoulder. Her expression shifted to something knowing. "I see you have found more than shelter here, Ambassador." Vexari did not move away from James. "Indeed, Commander Shira. This human has saved not only my life, but our mission for peace." The underground refuge, despite the Thalarine victory overhead, Commander Shira brought troubling news. The Krell had regrouped and were preparing a final assault, calling in reinforcements from other systems. The treaty transmission had reached Earth and the Thalarine homeworld. But the mercenaries were determined to kill Vexari as revenge. Politics be damned. James listened to the tactical discussion, then interrupted. "I know these desert canyons better than anyone. There's a network of caves 15 miles from here, ancient lava tubes that the geological surveys barely mapped. We could hide there until your reinforcements arrive." Shira looked skeptical, but Vexari nodded. "James's knowledge of this terrain has already proven invaluable. I trust his judgment." The words carried weight beyond their tactical meaning, and Shira's knowing look intensified. They gathered essential supplies and slipped away from the station under cover of a Thalarine diversionary attack. James led Vexari through winding desert paths, supporting him when the rough terrain aggravated his injuries. By the time they reached the hidden canyon entrance, both were exhausted. The caves were cool and dark, lit only by James's portable lights and the faint bioluminescence of Vexari's crystalline hair, which glowed softly in the darkness. James had explored these tunnels years ago, finding them beautiful in their stark, ancient emptiness. Now, sharing the space with Vexari, they felt intimate rather than lonely. They settled in a wider chamber where an underground spring created a small pool. James checked Vexari's wounds, pleased to see they were healing faster than human injuries would. "Your medical skill is exceptional," Vexari observed as James changed the dressings. "You mentioned you were retired. Why leave such important work?" James's hands stilled. "My wife Alina was also a medic. We served together for 15 years. She was killed in a colonial dispute, caught in crossfire while treating civilians. After that, I couldn't go back. Couldn't face the emergency rooms and battlefield hospitals without seeing her." Vexari covered James's hand with his own. "I am sorry. Loss of a bonded partner is devastating in any species." James looked up, surprised. "Bonded partner? That's what you call marriage?" Vexari nodded. "When do Thalarine find deep connection, they bond, sharing their lives completely. It is rare and precious. I have never bonded, though I have had companionships. My diplomatic career left little room for such connections." He paused, his golden eyes searching James's face. "Until now, I have never regretted that sacrifice. But meeting you has made me question my choices." The confession hung in the air between them. James set aside the medical supplies and moved closer. "I thought I was done with feelings like this. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone in the desert, studying rocks and avoiding people. Then you crashed into my life, literally, and suddenly I'm feeling things I never expected to feel again. Vexari's hand came up to cup James's cheek. Your wife? Would she have wanted you to remain alone? James thought of Alina, her fierce love, and equally fierce insistence that life be lived fully. No, she would have kicked my ass for hiding out here. She always said I had too much love in me to waste it on solitude. Then perhaps, Vexari said softly, she would approve of this. He leaned forward, and James met him halfway. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration of differences and similarities. Vexari's lips were warmer than human, with a texture like silk. The crystalline strands of his hair brushed James's face, surprisingly soft and carrying a faint, pleasant scent like ozone after rain. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing harder. James traced the angular line of Vexari's jaw. I've never been attracted to anyone not human before. Hell, I've barely been attracted to anyone since Alina. But you, everything about you just feels right. Vexari's smile was radiant in the dim cave light. Among my people, we believe that true connection transcends physical form. It is the meeting of souls that matters. He pulled James closer, wincing slightly at the movement. James immediately became professional again. You need to rest. Those ribs aren't fully healed. Vexari caught his hand before he could retreat into medical mode. Rest is important, yes. But so is this. What is growing between us? I do not want to lose it by being cautious. James settled beside him on the bedroll, and Vexari leaned against him. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the water drip in the pool, both processing the rapid evolution of their relationship. Tell me about your world, James finally said. What's it like? Vexari described his home with obvious love. Vast crystal forests that sang in the wind. Cities built in harmony with nature, a culture that valued artistic expression as highly as scientific achievement. We live long lives by human standards, nearly 2 of your centuries. This allows us to master multiple disciplines. I have been a musician, a scientist, a philosopher, and now a diplomat. Each life stage brings new purpose. James listened, fascinated. That must be amazing. Having that much time to explore different passions can also be lonely, Vexari admitted. Watching friends from shorter-lived species age and pass while we continue, it is why thallarine bonds are so precious. Having someone to share that long journey makes it meaningful. He turned to look at James directly. I know this is sudden, that we have known each other barely 2 days, but I feel drawn to you in ways I cannot fully explain. If you wish to explore this connection, I would be honored. But I must be honest about the complications. My diplomatic role, our different lifespans, the challenge of bridging to worlds. James thought about it, really considered what Vexari was offering. A relationship with an alien diplomat who would outlive him by decades, whose duties would take him across the galaxy, whose very existence in James's life would be complicated and often difficult. Then he thought about the alternative, returning to his empty desert station, continuing his solitary existence, never taking another chance on connection. I've lived safe for 5 years, James said finally. Safe and alone, and slowly dying inside. I think I'd rather take the risk. The battle for peace they had 3 days in the caves before Commander Shira's coded message reached them. The Krell reinforcements had arrived, and a final confrontation was inevitable. But during those 3 days, James and Vexari built something neither had expected to find. They talked for hours, sharing histories and dreams. Vexari taught James basic thallarine words, laughing gently at his pronunciation. James showed Vexari Earth music on his portable player. Delighted by the alien's emotional response to Beethoven, their physical relationship deepened as well. Vexari's injuries healed with remarkable speed, and they explored their attraction with careful tenderness. James discovered that thallarine skin changed temperature with emotion, growing warmer with arousal, and that the crystalline strands of Vexari's hair were surprisingly sensitive to touch. Vexari, in turn, seemed fascinated by every aspect of human physiology, his curiosity both intellectual and sensual. Their intimacy was a revelation for both, proof that connection could transcend the boundaries of species. but reality intruded when they received Shira's message. James studied the tactical situation on his portable console, his military training reasserting itself. The Krell are consolidating their forces here. He pointed to a position on the map. They're planning a ground assault on the main Thallarine base. But they're making a mistake. They're assuming standard defensive positions. Vexari looked over his shoulder. What do you see that they do not? James highlighted several points on the map. These are the old mining tunnels I surveyed 2 years ago. They connect to the Krell staging area. A small strike team could infiltrate their command structure. And do what? Vexari asked. James met his eyes. You said there are factions on both sides profiting from this conflict? What if we could prove it? What if we could show both Earth and Thallarine that specific individuals hired the Krell, so that this isn't about genuine political opposition but about money and power? Vexari's expression shifted to intense focus. The Krell keep detailed financial records for legal protection. If we could access their ship's computers, we could trace the payments back to their sources. They brought the plan to Commander Shira, who listened with growing approval. It is risky, but it could work. Ambassador, you are in no condition for such a mission. Vexari straightened despite the lingering pain in his ribs. I am the only one who can navigate Krell computer systems quickly enough, and James knows the tunnels. We must go together. Shira looked between them, clearly seeing more than just tactical necessity in their insistence on working as a team. Very well. But you will have backup. I will position a strike force to extract you once the data is obtained. The mission began at midnight. James led Vexari through the dark tunnels with sure steps, their way lit by dim glow sticks. They moved in silence, communicating with touches and gestures. Their brief time together having created an instinctive understanding. When they reached the access point beneath the Krell command ship, James placed the breaching charges while Vexari prepared his hacking equipment. Once we go in, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before they detect us, James whispered. Vexari nodded, his face set in determined lines. The breach was explosive and chaotic. They fought their way through surprised Krell guards, James's combat skills and Vexari's precision shooting working in perfect synchronization. In the ship's computer core, Vexari's fingers flew over alien interfaces while James guarded the entrance. Alarms blared, and James could hear reinforcements approaching. How much longer? He called. 2 minutes, Vexari replied, his voice strained with concentration. The encryption is complex. James laid down suppressing fire, dropping the first wave of Krell soldiers. But more were coming, too many to hold off alone. A blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He kept firing despite the pain, protecting Vexari with his body. Then Vexari was beside him, one hand still working the computer, the other shooting with impressive accuracy. Almost there, he said, and James heard both professional focus and personal fear in his voice. Fear not for himself, but for James. The data download completed just as Shira's strike force breached the ship from above. They extracted with seconds to spare, James bleeding and Vexari supporting him. Back at the Thallarine base, as medics tended to James's shoulder wound, Vexari presented the evidence to both Earth's diplomatic corps and the Thallarine High Council via secure transmission. The financial records showed a web of corruption, military contractors from Earth, or profiteers from Thallarine space, all funding the Krell to prevent peace. The revelation was explosive, leading to immediate arrests and investigations on both sides. The treaty, already transmitted, was now fast-tracked for ratification. But James barely noticed the political triumph. His wound was serious enough to require surgery. As they prepared him for the medical pod, Vexari refused to leave his side. You took that blast from me, Vexari said, his voice rough with emotion. You could have died. James managed a weak smile. Couldn't let anything happen to you. I just found you. Vexari gripped his hand tightly. James Sullivan, when you wake from this surgery, we need to discuss our future, because I cannot imagine mine without you in it. The words followed James into medically induced sleep, a promise and a hope. When he woke 12 hours later, Vexari was there. Sitting beside the medical pod, his golden eyes reflecting profound relief. You stayed, James said, his voice hoarse. I will always stay, Vexari replied, leaning down to press his forehead gently against James's. If you will have me? James reached up despite the pain to touch Vexari's face. I think I love you. Is that crazy? After less than a week? Vexari's smile was brilliant. Among my people, we believe that souls recognize each other instantly. Time is irrelevant. And yes, James Sullivan, I love you as well. New Horizons. The treaty was ratified within a month, establishing formal, peaceful relations between Earth and the Thalarine Empire. The exposure of the conspiracy led to significant political changes on both sides. With reformers gaining power and the military-industrial profiteers facing justice, Vexari was hailed as a hero, his actions ensuring peace and uncovering corruption. James found himself unexpectedly famous. The human who had sheltered an alien diplomat and helped expose an interstellar conspiracy. But fame held no appeal for James. He returned to his desert station, expecting to resume his solitary life despite everything that had happened. Vexari had diplomatic responsibilities, ceremonies to attend, reports to file. They had communicated daily since James's release from the Thalarine medical facility. But the conversations were brief, both dancing around the question of what came next. Could a relationship that had formed in crisis survive the return to normal life? Could a human and a Thalarine truly build something lasting? James was studying geological samples one evening when his sensors detected an approaching ship. He stepped outside to see a small Thalarine diplomatic craft landing near his station. His heart rate accelerated as the hatch opened and Vexari descended, looking somehow more beautiful in formal diplomatic robes than he had in battle-scarred armor. They stood facing each other across the desert sand, suddenly awkward after weeks apart. Then James crossed the distance between them in quick strides. Vexari met him halfway. Their kiss was desperate and relieved, weeks of longing and uncertainty pouring into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I have missed you, Vexari said simply. Every moment of every day. James cupped his face with both hands. Then why did you stay away so long? Vexari's expression grew serious. Because I needed to arrange my future. To make choices that would allow us to truly be together, not stolen moments between my duties. He took James's hands in his. I have resigned my position as roving ambassador. James's eyes widened. Vexari, you loved that work. I can't let you give up your career for me. Vexari shook his head. I'm not giving it up, merely changing its focus. I have accepted a permanent position as the Thalarine Empire's first ambassador to Earth. I will be based here. On this world, working to strengthen the bonds between our peoples. It is important work, meaningful work, and it allows me to be with you. He searched James's face anxiously. If that is what you want, if you are willing to share your life with me, complications and all. James felt tears sting his eyes, something he rarely allowed himself. You would do that? Give up traveling the galaxy? Living on your homeworld? All of it? Vexari pulled him close. James, I have spent a century traveling, exploring, seeking purpose. And I found it in a desert cave with a stubborn human medic who saved my life and then captured my heart. Yes, I would give up everything else for this, for us. James kissed him again, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude into it. When they finally entered the station, arms around each other, it felt like coming home. Over the following weeks, they built a life together. Vexari established his embassy in a nearby city, but spent every free moment at James's desert station. They merged their lives with surprising ease. Vexari's diplomatic work complementing James's research. James found himself drawn back into active medicine, using his skills to help integrate Thalarine and human medical practices. Their relationship deepened, moving beyond the intensity of their first meeting into something solid and sustainable. There were challenges. The cultural differences sometimes led to misunderstandings, and they faced prejudice from those who believed cross-species relationships were wrong. But they faced it together, their bond growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. James learned to read Vexari's subtle emotional cues, the slight color shifts in his skin, and changes in temperature. Vexari learned human humor and colloquialisms, his formal speech patterns relaxing into something more natural. 6 months after Vexari's return, on a clear desert night under the twin moons, Vexari proposed bonding in the Thalarine tradition. The ceremony was a blending of cultures, attended by both human and Thalarine friends. Commander Shira served as Vexari's honor guard, while James's old military buddy stood as his best man. When they exchanged vows, promising to share their lives for as long as those lives lasted, there was not a dry eye in the gathering. James knew their time together would be limited by his human lifespan. Vexari would outlive him by perhaps a century, but rather than overshadowing their happiness, this knowledge made every moment more precious. They decided to make the most of the time they had. Traveling together when Vexari's duties allowed, exploring both Earth and Thalarine space, James discovered a passion for xenobiology, studying the medical needs of different species. Vexari found joy in Earth's natural wonders, particularly the deserts that had brought them together. Years passed, their love deepening from passionate intensity into comfortable partnership. They built a home together, a hybrid structure blending human and Thalarine architecture, filled with mementos of their adventures. On quiet evenings, they would sit together watching the sunset, Vexari's hand warm in James's, talking about everything and nothing. James never forgot Alina, but he learned that the heart had capacity for more than one great love. Vexari helped him honor her memory while building something new. The treaty they had fought to protect flourished, bringing unprecedented cooperation between humans and Thalarine. Medical advances, cultural exchanges, scientific collaboration, all blossomed from that initial agreement. James and Vexari became symbols of what was possible when different peoples chose connection over conflict. But to them, the larger political implications mattered less than the simple fact of their togetherness. Two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. As James approached his 70th birthday, walking was harder and his hair had gone silver, Vexari remained physically unchanged, still looking as he had the night James found him in the desert. But when James expressed sadness about their different aging rates, Vexari simply pulled him close. "I would rather have 50 years with you than an eternity without you. Every moment is a gift I treasure." And in those words, James found peace, knowing that their love, however brief in Thalarine terms, was as real and precious as any that had ever existed. They had started with a crash in the desert and a choice to help a stranger. They had built something extraordinary from that simple act of kindness, proving that love could transcend species, culture, and time itself. And on clear desert nights, they still sat together under the stars, hands intertwined, grateful for the universe that had brought them together and the courage they had both shown in choosing to love despite the odds.